Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchedoye alahari sanmyao sanpatoshe. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa, bai qian wan jie nan zao yu. Wo jin jian wan de shou chi, yuan jie ru lai zhen shi yi. Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Venerable Master, Dharma friends, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Heng Shi. We're here today to look into the Flower Garland Sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra's 10 stages chapter, the Shi Dipin, the 10 grounds. And we're going to be looking at the verses of the 10th ground, talking about the 5th ground, which is to say the verses of every chapter reprise. They look back at the text just covered. And we are going successively through them. Last week, we talked about the 4th stage, which is the 37 limbs of enlightenment, the Sanshi Qi Daopin. Today, we're going to be looking at ground 5, the 5th stage, and we're going to be talking about expedient means, following samadhi. That's what our topic is today. All right, we've got a lot to cover. We have a lot of announcements coming up. And today, here in Queensland, Australia, it is Anzac Day, an annual observance of a catastrophic military failure that was formative in the coming identity of Australia and New Zealand, as well as Turkey, and happened back in the First World War. So today is the day, they always say, lest we forget, because the losses for this grand nation of Australia were horrific, and it was a shock to the nation that reverberates to this day. So we'll be talking about Anzac Day a little bit later. So to begin, let us invoke spiritual presence the way we like to do. We're coming back to page 86 when we're done with that. I'll take you out to the title of the sutra. And you know, there are Buddhists in the world who will tell you that all of the power of the text is carried in the name. Some people believe that. The Jodo Shinshu, for example. I'm sorry, that's my mistake. That's the Nichiren, very, very different group. The Nichiren tradition in Japanese Buddhism believes that if you recite the name of the Dharma Flower Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, all of the virtue, all of the benefits of the text come to you. And that has become extremely popular and developed way to practice Buddhism is to just recite the text, recite the name of the sutra. So what about that? What's in a name, right? What kind of energy is crystallized in the name of a sacred text? That's a question. So here we are. We're about to chant the name of the Flower Garland Sutra. And at the same time, we're saying, please, we're saying, we would love to invite you, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Flower Garland Assembly, Flower Treasury Assembly, please come to where we are opening this text with open hearts and an attitude of wanting to learn more. The Chinese would call it 好学, just a love of learning of the Dharma. And with that, if you would come and bless our assembly, we would be delighted. So that's the purpose of this invocation. All right, can we do all that? One more time. We're gonna make that G string a little sharper here. The next thing we're going to do is recite, chant the verse that we're currently on. We're on page 84 right here. And the text says that the Bodhisattva, who is the teacher of this section of the Flower Garland Sutra, is chanting. He's not merely speaking, right? So we want to try our best to honor the verse section, right? This is poetry. This is not the long lines of prose. This is the crystallized wisdom, the concentrated wisdom of verses. And we're going one by one through the 10 stages. So actually, we're on page 86 today. So here it is. I'll give everybody a line with a little bit of a melody attached to it, and you give it back to me if you're willing to do so. Here we go. Dum, di, da, dum. Here we go. 智慧方便善观察，智慧方便善观察。种种实现救众生，种种实现救众生，复供十力无上尊，复供十力无上尊，其如无生先前地， qi ru wu sheng xian qian di. Okay, English. With wisdom and expedience, he skillfully contemplates. With wisdom and expedience, he skillfully contemplates and appears in many ways to rescue sentient beings, and appears in many ways to rescue sentient beings. He worships the peerless honored ones of 10 powers. He worships peerless honored ones of 10 powers and reaches the birthless, the stage of manifestation, and reaches the birthless, the stage of manifestation. All right. What is the key word for the 5th stage? It is fangbian, expedient skill. How did we get to expedient skill as the keyword? So I've been, because the 10 stages Dharma is so rich, you can, if you're the explainer, if you're the person who gets the privilege of talking about this text, you can go any direction. There's so much here. You can pick up this thread and take it back to the entire fabric, or you can pick up a thread over here and the whole fabric is revealed, depending on how you do it. So what I'm paying attention to are the changes in the consciousness of the individual, male or female, doesn't matter, who is enrolled in the curriculum of the 10 stages, right? Underlying that thought is the idea that the 10 stages is a training. It's a course for bodhisattvas. This is how bodhisattvas get there, all the way through to the end, from number 1 to number 10. And that's consistent with our understanding how we've been explaining the 10 stages as instructions. This is a textbook. It's a how-to, right? It's a doc file or a PDF that comes, you can download it if you want to learn how to operate your new toaster, your new microwave, right? It's a how-to. So as the bodhisattva goes through this course, what changes is his or her responses to the Dharma practices they are practicing. The first step was always the Bodhi resolve, and the Bodhi resolve happens when somebody looks at their potential and says, I actually, in this body, in theory, could become a Buddha. I know the only thing preventing me from being a Buddha right now is my understanding of the method and my application to it. If I'm lazy, I'm a future Buddha. If I'm vigorous, I'm getting close, right? So, in other words, practices and vows are what emerge from this Bodhi resolve. The second part of it is, you know what I have to do in order to become a Buddha. If I realize I have that potential, what I have to do is, our code language is teach and transform living beings. I have to take all of the trillions of living beings in my body and mind across. That's more code language. Take them across. I have to get rid of their afflictions. Okay, that's it. It's the 2 parts of the Bodhi resolve. I can do it. Here's how. Buddhahood is in my grasp, but I can't lift it up until I get a lot of compassionate help, until everybody is working with me. That's how I can become a Buddha. So step number 2 is the Bodhisattva starts in this course, and each of the 10 stages has a name. The first stage is called the stage of happiness, right? The second is the stage of getting rid of defilement. And the third one is the stage of emitting light. And last week, we talked about the stage called blazing wisdom. Okay, and this one, number 5, where we are today, is called difficult conquest, hard to win, or hard to beat. It's the stage called hard to beat, hard to be victorious, difficult. And then next week, we're going to look at the stage of manifestation. That's the 6th. But step by step by step through these stages, this person who is in training has been undergoing changes, been undergoing real developments in consciousness, which happens, what? When does this happen? This happens when you as a human being meet the Dharma. The Dharma is, there's, the word in Chinese is fa man, gateways to the Dharma. And fa, this word that the Chinese, the character that the Chinese used to translate the Sanskrit word dharma, in Pali it's dhamma, right? This word also can be to imitate. 就法他了. We imitate him. And by extension, when it becomes a noun, it's like a template. You template the bodhisattva. What's a template? A template is a pattern. You could call it a mold, right? M-O-L-D. So the bodhisattva gets the student, the future bodhisattva, the future Buddha, the one in training, gets the template of how a bodhisattva does stuff, how they think, how they react, how they speak, things they don't do, because they've learned it will hurt and obstruct them. This bodhisattva applies that template to themselves, their body and mind, and the Dharma transforms them. I think of it as a cookie cutter mold. Anybody have a mom who, on the right time of the year, made cookies? My mom had, at Christmas, there were Christmas cookie cutters. And the idea was, you started out with a lump of dough, and the dough, sometimes it would be gingerbread, right? Sometimes it would be Christmas cookies that were kind of white flour, but then they were going to get sprinkles on top. They were going to get green sprinkles and red sprinkles. And what were the molds? One was a Christmas tree. One was a snowman, because we were from Ohio, where it snows in the winter. Not like Queensland here, where winter is accompanied by bright sun and green trees. So my mom would take a thing of dough, roll it out, and then hand me the cookie cutter. And I would take the Christmas tree or the star or the snowman cookie cutter and go thump over the dough. And then out would come the dough in the shape of a star or a cookie or a Christmas tree or a snowman. We'd put it on the baking sheet and put all kinds of glitter and sugary sprinkles. What do they call them? In the East Coast, I think they're called jimmies. You get a jimmies on top of your ice cream cone. And I think that's maybe a Coney Island thing. Hey, you want some jimmies on your ice cream there? Yeah, give me the jimmies, right? It's those green and red and white and yellow and silver sprinkles you put on top. So we'd sprinkle the jimmies on top of the gingerbread, and out would come a Christmas cookie. Okay, and the mold was the deal. Sometimes, usually, there was too much dough, and the cookie cutter would leave behind it this residue because there was too much. Sometimes, if there wasn't enough dough rolled out with a rolling pin, you'd have a snowman without his head, or a Christmas tree without the limb, And so you get the analogy, right? What is the Dharma? The Dharma practices, particularly Faman, when it's talking about Buddha Dharma practices. And this is not Dharma as phenomena. And it's not particularly Dharma as the teachings of the Buddha generic. So this word Dharma in Sanskrit has multiple meanings. We're talking about Faman, right? Practices. Dharma, I don't like the word conducts. I like practices. So Dharma practices, such as what? What are we talking about? Meditation. We're talking about precepts, right? We're talking about changing your diet, eating a harmless diet, right? So you're not accumulating, killing karma along with nourishing your body. And those are all Dharma gateways, Faman. We take the cookie dough of our bodies and minds and our awareness and our consciousness and our nature, and we apply a Dharma cookie cutter to that. And sometimes we're too much and we have to reduce a bit to fit the mold. Sometimes we're not enough and we have to add some in order to fit the mold. But when we put that Dharma gateway, that Faman, Dharma door, Dharma gateway, cookie cutter over the mold of our bodies and minds, what happens is we come out in the shape of the Dharma. Maybe it's an arhat, maybe it's a sage, maybe it's a bodhisattva mold, maybe it's a Buddha mold, right? Now, this is a big extended metaphor. You get what I'm trying to point out, right? But where do we find the molds? The sutras. Who is the boss of all the molds? It's Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, Pushen Pusa, called Dahang Pushen Pusa, right? The Bodhisattva of the greatest number of, or the greatest practices. And the Avatamsaka Sutra, particularly the 10 stages chapter, is where we find those Dharma gateways. All right? So how are we doing? We all, this is the time to, break. Okay. From 1 to 5, where we are today, the Bodhisattva has been challenging his or her consciousness to expand and expand and expand, to contain and to be acceptable to the mold of the Bodhisattva as the sutra explains the changes that will happen to you if you put yourself into the mix. Okay? So, going back here, first stage, makes offerings, becomes happy, brings forth a great resolve. That's our Bodhi resolve. But body on the first stage, full of vows. Vows to get happy, vows to help, vows to leave behind fear, right? Vows to cultivate wholesome methods filled with compassion, because why? She has now changed, seeing through the things that used to be so compelling, like how do you spend your time, right? You still go out with the gang, bend an elbow, toss back a few. Well, there's no judgment here. It's just, how long does it take you to get rid of the alcohol in your system so you can focus your mind again, right? At this point, the Bodhisattva goes, oh yeah, the second stage is all about good and evil, the 10 goods and the 10 evils, right? And he, at the same time that he is now putting this Dharma gateway cookie cutter mold onto his, electromagnetic protoplasm that is the body and mind, he's learning about living beings. There's a parallel development in the 10 stages where the Bodhisattva's wisdom is growing. Why? He can see through stuff now. Things that used to capture him and confuse him and entice him and repel him at the same time. Now it's like, no, I'm using the Buddha's eyes to look at Dharma's lowercase d, meaning phenomena in the universe, and they're not as appealing anymore. I think maybe I'm going to learn to let go of the stuff that defiled my body and mind before. Let it go, because every bit that I let go of worldly dharmas, that's how much I can pick up of world transcending dharmas, and I can see further. And I understand living beings, misery and pain. So there's a growing awareness in the Bodhisattva that he is really leaving behind pain and suffering, because he's getting to the place where he can actually cope now with the stuff rising in his mind. Okay, third stage, what happens? At this point, he is seeing through to the nature of what are called conditioned things. The Bodhisattva goes, whoa, you know, my body is going to die. The earth is going to die. I see it, because why? It was born. Everything born dies. Everything that comes together is going to come apart. Everything. And the Bodhisattva sees this now and isn't like depressed, doesn't reject it, doesn't go into a nihilistic mode, doesn't decide, oh, I'm going to get all the goodness I can because I'm going to die, and plunge into kind of a hedonistic pleasure seeking as a response. No, none of those things. Because why? The wisdom that allows him to see through the nature of phenomena at the same time is supported by his awareness of the misery of people he cares deeply about, she cares deeply about. So there's these two things are growing. Wisdom and compassion are growing. And the Bodhisattva constantly is going, yeah, I really see how much I, like all living beings, am upside down, was upside down. But when I pick up the Dharma, when I put the cookie cutter mold of the Dharma over my dough of my body and mind, I hurt less. And I have a clue that I didn't before. I can see further now. My eyes are getting polished, right? I'm polishing the mirror of my wisdom eyes, and I can see further. So last week, and then that we really woke up on the third stage. Third ground was where the Bodhisattva goes, man, oh man, oh man. The only thing that actually helps living beings is the Buddha's teaching. I know it works. It worked on me. Who can teach me more? Where can I find more of the Buddha Dharma? That's what he wants, right? And if he can find more of the Buddha Dharma, he can help people better. He can help more living beings wake up. So at that point, he says he gives up nothing in his search for Dharma. He'll throw his body down from the highest heaven if he can meet one person who will teach him 4 lines of Dharma, says, right? So this fire is lit. Okay, fourth stage, last week, he gets knowledge of the Tao, making offerings to countless Buddhas, contemplating merit and virtue. What does he learn? He meets what are called the 37 limbs of enlightenment. And we, since I started poking around to learn more about the Sanshirchi Daopin, also called the Bodhipakya Dharmas in Pali, I discovered that of all the many, in our tradition, we say 84,000 Dharma doors. Of all of those, there are several groups that are shared by Theravada Mahayana. I'm not as well versed on the Tibetan Mahayana, but I bet they're there too. The 37 limbs, the 37 wings of awakening, Sanshirchi Daopin, they are celebrated and honored by the entire body of Buddhist cultivators. So they're shared in common. They include the Eightfold Path, for example, right? So they're very powerful. That was last week. Okay, What are they? It's a collection of cookie cutters. The Bodhisattva now applies all these different methods, the 5 roots, the 5 powers, the 7 Bodhi shares, right? All 37. And he is getting better at teaching. He is refining his body and mind. Oh my goodness. This Bodhisattva is now getting skillful and awesome in his or her ability to counter the problems he sees in the world with solutions that work. And he is prepared for the stage of difficult conquest. And what happens? In a single word, samadhi happens. What we saw last week among the 37 limbs was of the different groups, right? There were 37 different groups. There was 2 that were repeated multiple times. One is nian, mindfulness, and the other is ding, samadhi. So last week, this Bodhisattva is getting to be a really good meditator. And he's meditating all the time, not only when he's sitting with his legs crossed, counting his breath. We're watching in Vipassana, watching thoughts rise and fall. Right? He's meditating all the time. And once the Bodhisattva gets to samadhi, once this experience of what in our code language in Chinese is called Chanting Sutra, is right focus and right reception is the one way to translate it. So filtering, right? Receiving the right signal, constantly on their own signal, tuned in to their own broadcast, right? Yes, yes, I'm getting signal, not noise. It's signal. I'm tuned in to the station, right? 1400 on your FM dial. The Bodhisattva is there, tuned in correctly, zheng, right and proper. What happens? What's the next transformation of body and mind, consciousness that happens to the Bodhisattva here? He realizes that he is now able to go out and mingle with living beings and not retreat, not fall back, not fall away from his Bodhi resolve. And up to this point, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, it was, the darkness was fading, the light was growing, but the Bodhisattva hadn't been on the path that long. And before samadhi arises, you can be shaken, you can be obstructed, you can be turned, right? But in that 4th stage, as samadhi grows, you get to stage 5. If you look at the paramitas, that's one of the things we've been doing, is paralleling the perfections, the 6 paramitas, the 10 paramitas with the 10 stages. This is prajna, I'm sorry, my mistake. This is called samadhi, right? This is dhyana, chanting. So the Bodhisattva is now, his mind is really, really firm. So where does he go? What does it said? Said, with wisdom and expedients, he skillfully contemplates. This is called expedient wisdom. And what did we find? I'm going to take us now back to the text of the 5, the 5th stage, right? Going to take a look at the text and translate it quickly as we go. There's a piece of it that I had forgotten when I started looking, and boy, when I touched this again, it was like, oh yeah, that's what the Bodhisattva's new awareness is. What is he doing? He is reading out living beings. What does he say? Look, I'm going to just do it in English for you, roughly. Here we go. This Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, has the thought, all these living beings are stupid, ignorant, without any knowledge. They are pathetic. They get countless numbers, innumerable bodies that are either going bad, have already gone bad, are going bad now, or will go bad. And those bodies go bad. And they cannot, in the bodies that they get, sheng yanshang, get tired of them, right? Instead, they simply habitually increase their miseries, their 苦事, right? They follow those miseries and flow in samsara, in birth and death, and they never find a way out. They are caught in the house of the skandhas, their bodies and minds, and they don't seek to escape. They don't know to weary, they don't know to be aware, to be warned by, and to be afraid of the four great poisonous snakes. What are they? Earth, air, fire, and water, right? They look at their bodies and they fall in love with them. Bunang, Batu, they can't pull out the arrows of arrogance. They can't extinguish the fires of delusion and hatred, greed, hatred, and delusion. They cannot break through the Stygian darkness of ignorance. They can't dry up the ocean of love and desire. They don't seek to know the sage and the guiding master of the 10 powers. They dive into, instead, the thick forest of demonic intent. How are you doing? Are you anybody ready? It's like, oh man, right? Why is the Bodhisattva he get up on the wrong side of the bed this morning? My goodness, this Bodhisattva is just, So they, in the ocean of birth and death, they are sunk down in the waves of Jueguan. They are sunk down in the waves of awakened contemplation. Disciples of the Buddha, this Bodhisattva Mahasattva further says, okay, having read out 10 kinds of disasters of living beings, right? If this were a doctor, he'd be saying, you're in trouble, man. You're sick. You're in big danger, right? With the diseases that you have. The Bodhisattva Mahasattva further says, these living beings experience miseries like these, and they are all alone with no one to save them, no one to rely on, no shore, no refuge, no guides, no eyes, covered with ignorance, tied up in the dark. I should cultivate blessings and wisdom and the dharmas that aid the way on their behalf. I alone should make this resolve without waiting for any companions or help. And I should take this merit and virtue so that all these living beings ultimately get pure to the point where they themselves become the Tathagatas of the 10 powers and unobstructed wisdom. Okay, there we go. Whew. Yeah. So what is the Bodhisattva in the 5th stage? He is looking deeply at living beings in a way that he hasn't before at this level. And when I remember when I first saw this, this text, I had just been talking to somebody who said, Avatamsaka Sutra, it's just all philosophy. No, it's the Buddha's, it's this high level stuff and out in the cosmos, it's sky pilot stuff. Oh, airy fairy, pie in the sky. Nobody can understand it. It's just too philosophical. And I was like, maybe we're not reading the same sutra, man, because this is pure heart. The Bodhisattva is looking at me as a living being and saying, yeah, look, there all these analogies, right? The flow of samsara, the house of the skandhas, can't get out. The snakes of the elements are going to bite you. And the arrows of arrogance are plunged deep into your heart, right? The fire of the three poisons. Yes, like, yeah, that's right. And then the Bodhisattva says, if I wait for others to help me, it'll be too late, or we'll waste our time arguing or trying to communicate. I have to do it myself. Don't wait, right? And you go, that's not philosophy. That's applied. Maybe it's philosophical, but it's applied philosophy. It's heart. It's courage. It's the most altruistic, courageous, heroic resolve that I've read, that I've heard. It's like, that's admirable. And when I read it, you get this boost. The things that seemed insurmountable just suddenly melt away. And what you're left with is this hero's bugle blast, right? It's just, yeah, I can do it too. If the Bodhisattva is able to rouse himself, herself like that, what am I waiting for? Right? That's the feeling that I get. What else? What else? There's also, the word was expedience. Okay, so I got to get back to my sequential description of the development of the Bodhisattva's consciousness. What is new on the fourth stage was focus on samadhi, nian and ding, right? Mindfulness and samadhi through the 37 limbs. And that ability to stay focused, that ability to sort out. I think I've always been searching for a better translation of right reception. Zheng, ding, zheng, shou. That's the classical code language for what samadhi is. That's the Shifu Master Hua would say, San Mei is zheng, ding, zheng, shou. Right focus, correct focus, and right reception, receiving. Well, what is that, right? Right bestowal, shou, jie shou. And I think if we translate it as right reception, what does it mean? Radio reception. You're focused on the signal. You got the right station and you're tuned to it. You don't lose it, right? You don't go into static you stay on you lock onto the station. And what is it? It's right, meaning you don't go astray. You stay on if in a politician, they say stays on message, right? You stay on message. Okay, what is that message? It's looking at living beings, seeing how pathetic we are, and coming up with an expedient means to teach us. That's key. This expedience, that's where the Bodhisattva now can go back into the world and not lose zheng, ding, zheng, shou, his focus and his tune into the station. He stays on his lens, his camera lens is crystal clear focused, and his antenna are tuned directly to the right station. So the Bodhisattva can go into the world and teach and not lose the connection. Okay, that's the next step. What's an expedient? Check it out. Next piece. Here it is. Gonna have to make that bigger here. There we go. There it is. Coming right down to here. Fifth stage text. Ready? I'm going to do I wanted to show the Chinese, and then I'll do the rough translation as we go. Okay. This Bodhisattva Mahasattva, in order to benefit living beings, practices all of the arts in the world. 事件记忆弥补洗盖习 is a practitioner of all the worldly arts. For example, what I mean by that is 文字算术, academic subjects such as words, language, mathematics, calculation, 图书印息 印息 visual arts, like images and graphic arts, handwriting, the making of seals, right? 地水火风, the four elements used in what? Geomancy, used in, hydroponic gardening, okay? 种种诸论, all of the logic and rhetoric. That's the word. The rhetoric department at UC Berkeley was right down where I used to go by the rhetoric department. What are they doing in there? Being rhetorical? So, Shenji Dongdang, all of these, this Bodhisattva is skilled at. So this is kind of like, all of this would be more or less academic kinds of studies that have to do with printing. So things the eye sees. So texts, mathematics, graphics, calligraphy, seal making, then geomancy and geology, 地水火风, including, that could be physics, actually, how the elements interplay, or alchemy, right? Then theories, rhetoric, logic. He is an expert at these. Yo Shan, okay, next what? Yo Shan Fang Yao, good at medicine, compiling medical formulas. Liao Zhi Zhu Bing, to heal all manner of illnesses. Dian Huang Qian Xiao, including mental illness and possession by spirits. Gui Mo Gu Du, including hexes and voodoo, right? Xi Neng Chu Duan, he can purge and exorcise all of those. Okay, expedient skills. 文笔占用, 歌舞伎要, 嬉笑谈说, 嬉善其事. Okay, here we go. Composition, praises, and eulogies. So singing, 歌舞, music and dancing, drama and entertaining conversation, he is all good at. Notice worldly skills, expedient skills. 果称存意, 公斋愿饭, 泉柳波尺, 草木花药, 繁琐布列, 先得其宜. Okay, what is it? The Bodhisattva next is good at nation building, cities, walls, villages, hamlets, palaces, residences, gardens, different kinds of gardens, ponds, streams, dikes, and lakes, grass, trees, flowers, medicines. All of these, each in their sequential order, the Bodhisattva is expert at. So look at this. In other words, this, when you say expedient means, this Bodhisattva is going out to master everything in the world, every branch of mundane knowledge, right? Worldly knowledge. Here's where the Bodhisattva, because he's got samadhi. Because of his samadhi, he can go into this knowledge and not forget his focus on the suffering of living beings. All of this is done skillfully, expediently, because why? He can use it to teach. Okay, what else? Look at the next bunch here. 金因模拟珍珠琉璃累被玉碧玉善乎等藏悉知其处. Okay, 出玉是 okay, 出玉其处. Gold, silver, jewelry, pearls, lapis lazuli, the shells that come out of the ocean, jade, coral, and other kinds of riches. He knows exactly what to do with them. 悉知其处. 出益施人. Okay, so in other words, things that people value, rare goods, right? Valuables. gold and silver, gems, jewelry, rare things. The Bodhisattva is an expert. He's a goldsmith. He's a jewelry maker, he or she, right? And he uses these to teach people. Furthermore, look at this one. 日月星书无名地震夜梦吉凶声波修旧显善观察一无错留. Okay, this next bunch is fascinating. Look at this. The Bodhisattva is a fortune teller. Sun, moon, planets, constellations, the cries of birds, the shaking of the earth, dreams at night of their good and bad varieties, the appearances of people's bodies, and the, what would this last one be? Xiu jiu, prognostication, xian shan guancha. He is really good at looking at all of these, yi wu cuo niu, never makes a mistake. The Bodhisattva is an astrologer. The Bodhisattva is a fortune teller. The Bodhisattva is an interpreter of dreams, right? Why? Because people are vulnerable, not vulnerable. People are open to being led to their own Bodhi resolve through this. Oh, let's see. Oh, you're a Pisces? Oh my goodness. Wow, Pisces this month. That's really interesting. Do you know, is it Pisces moon or sun? You know, oh, you've got a grand cross in your chart. Look at that. No kidding. Oh, you know, the Bodhisattva can use this language, these symbols to help people wake up. Okay. Oh boy. 持戒如禅神通无量四等基于一切世间之事当于众生不为损恼为利益故先其开示坚令安住无上佛法. Key, this is the key to this whole list, right? Which is holding the precepts, mastering the dhyanas, psychic powers without measure, the four formless samadhis and the others. All such things as these, as long as they are not harmful to living beings, but instead benefit them, he talks about them and can explain them completely, gradually, to bring living beings to stay at peace in the supreme Buddha Dharma. There you go. That's the motive. All right. There's the priorities. So look at this whole list of stuff, of worldly knowledge. Talk about jack of all trades, right? And master of all, jack of all trades and master of most, right? He is completely able to talk about these things as long as the purpose, as long as number one, doesn't hurt beings, helps them instead, and brings them step by step to anju, to live, to rest at peace, to stay comfortably within the supreme Buddha Dharma. Isn't that amazing? I think that's amazing, you know, because it's all clearly laid out here. The Bodhisattva's got samadhi, doesn't move from his focus on bringing beings out of suffering and compassion. So he deeply masters all of the things still engaged in the six senses. This is not world transcending Buddha Dharma, but his purpose is to lead us back to world transcending Buddha Dharma. So now, all right, there we go. What about this? It's a bodhisattva's education. And if it were an arhat's education, this wouldn't be there. We wouldn't, the education would stop here, because the bodhisattva at this point actually knows enough to save himself or herself. Once you enter samadhi at that point, you can reach a nirvana, but it is a nirvana that does not awaken and enliven all a potential of your nature, according to the Mahayana teaching, right? Bodhisattva, if he or she enters nirvana at that point through samadhi, doesn't have to go back to teach, right? There's anybody who's been in a Zen tradition, including me, I was in a Zen tradition, the Soto school of Japanese Zen. Sooner or later, you run into what are called the oxherding pictures, right? The oxherding pictures. And they show a cultivator who is going through the various stages of development in their progress. And at some point, they tame the ox. And one of the next to last pictures of the ox herding pictures is riding the ox back into the village, right? Now, what does that indicate? You are a master of the Dharma, and you are coming back in order to share what you know. The following ox herding picture is a circle, which is you and the Dharma lose your boundaries. There's no difference between you and the teachings. So I remember when I was, I personally, my own story, I was silent for 6 years in my life. And I did not interact with the world except to explain sutras with Hung Chao, with former Bhikshu Hung Chao. I would speak Dharma and then go back. Anybody want to talk to me? Not going to talk to you, right? I went to this extreme place of cutting off any contact with the world in order to focus. I did not get on the ox to come back into the village except to speak Dharma, explain the sutras in Los Angeles and then in Vancouver, go wheel and then go Buddha temple. This is during the 80s. And the reason being, I couldn't hold on my samadhi. I didn't have enough strength to be able to talk. And my vow was to just stay in my bubble, stay in my silent world. And the Bodhisattva here can come back and no worries, no problems. Talk to people, teach them about gem smithing, teach them about being a sailboat instructor, sailing instructor, Japanese archery, calligraphy, tea making, astrology. Oh my goodness. All the things that the Bodhisattva can teach at this point because he's solid. He's not going to move. He's not going to be confused and break his precepts, retreat from his practices. Because the two things that I shared from the chapter, fifth stage, were his look at living beings and going, boy, they are really, really in trouble. They don't even think that they're going to die, right? How about people who say, you can't force me to wear a mask. I demand freedom. You can't tie me up with that face mask. I'm free to die. And anybody else, I don't care about anybody else because I'm myself. I'm free. So you go, yeah, that's living beings right there, right there. They're confused. They take freedom to disregard public health because the doctor's trying to save them and everyone. No, you can't save me. I refuse to be saved. So he's, yep, that's living beings. And that, what does it do? He doesn't blow them off. He doesn't satirize them and run away. He says, got to find a way to teach them. Got to find a way to show them their connection to everyone. That the people whose lives they consider don't matter are them. because we're on a very perilous spaceship called Spaceship Planet Earth. And we have polluted our planet, our spaceship, and systems aren't working. You can breathe a breath of air that will kill you because it contains coronavirus virus. And how sad that we've got air that we can't breathe, or it'll kill us. Air can be fatal if you breathe the wrong air. So mask your face so you don't contribute through your lungs as a carrier of a virus, and other people will do the same so you can breathe without dying, right? We haven't done a good job as humans on our planet. We have created an unsustainable situation. The oceans are being fished out. Indeed, indeed. So, my goodness, what's the worst thing that humans have done? Probably is warfare. No other species, well, somebody will come up with, maybe piranha, they'll come up with some species that proves, according to our survey, that actually ants do wage war. Okay, bees do wage war, all right. But we don't do genocide where we wipe out entire species. Many, if you say, okay, well, what about lions? What about elephants? Well, people who have done the research and looked at their behavior learned that in the animal kingdom, much of what looks like warlike behavior never actually gets to conflict. It's posturing. You show how big your teeth are, like that. And your competitor, the other, capable male who could become the alpha of the tribe, of the band, sees how big your teeth are and says, well, no worries. Well, I'll follow you, A lot of warfare in the animal kingdom is done to scare away. And you never actually get to killing. Humans, on the other hand, the United States budget for defense and weapons is larger than all the other nations on Earth combined times, 10? Right? My passport, the United States passport, I belong to a country that must be very, very afraid. Very afraid. Because we feel that we're not safe until we have enough weapons to destroy the planet multiple times over. And the Defense Department budget continues to grow, right? If we were confident, we would say things like Master Hua, who said, Department of National Defense, the strongest national defense is education. If you educate your citizens, if you raise your sons and daughters to be unafraid and instead to see the connection between themselves and all beings, they will use the resources of your nation to make sure that everyone feels they have enough. They're not greedy, they're not angry, they're not deluded to think that there's anything to be gained by invading another country's boundaries and killing many of their citizens and destroying their plant growing fields, turning them into battlefields. There's anything to be gained by aggression, military aggression and armament and mobilization and stockpiling of weapons, right? Our founder of United Religions Initiative, the Right Reverend Bill Swing, former, now retired Bishop of the Episcopal Church in California, after founding this organization called United Religions Initiative and leading it to having over 1,000 cooperation circles in every continent on the planet, where did he go? Where did he put his time? He put his time along with the man who just died, the former Secretary of Secretary of State William Schultz in San Francisco. The two of them and others devoted their efforts to annihilating atomic weapons. They paid a lot of attention to the fact that our future as humans is still very perilous because there's so many atomic weapons out on the planet, and it only takes one to trigger the others. And this was what these wise, if America has wise men, here are two of them, right? Bishop Swing and Secretary Schultz. And they led international leaders against nuclear deployment, trying to continue Clinton was the American president who, together with the Russians and all, began the work of nuclear disarmament. But these qualified, compassionate, and wise national leaders said, we're not done. We really, really need to disarm ourselves from nuclear weapons because they are a very real threat. We're now currently in America, 568,000 Americans have died of COVID-19, but one dirty nuke in a major US city, which then gets up into the atmosphere and spreads its toxic radioactive virus, out into the jet stream, and it lands all over the planet, that could kill in a blink of an eye easily millions of people. So we humans have this strange ignorance, and the Bodhisattva here in the fifth stage points to it. We are warlike. And my ancestors, coming from Northern Europe, Ireland, Scotland, and people tell me that I'm actually Norwegian, they say. You look like you're a Norwegian. They say, no, I'm not. I'm from Ohio. Well, your grandparents were Norwegian, right? Well, no, they weren't. They were Vikings before they became Irish and Scottish. Oh, okay. So these people are among the most warlike tribes on the planet. And so I take this very personally and appreciate the Bodhisattva here, entering samadhi, mastering this Chanting Sutra, right focus, right tuning in to the signal, reception, who says, no, I want people to anju wushan fofa. I want them to live at peace, to rest here, securely, anju, stably, securely, in the Buddhist teaching, which is a teaching of ahimsa, no harm. Today is Anzac Day here in Australia, and a songwriter named Eric Bogle, I think Eric is Irish, if I'm not mistaken, wrote a song called "The Band Played Waltzing Matilda." And Anzac Day is a story from the First World War, when a coalition of military from France, Ireland, Canada, and prominently Australia and New Zealand, trying to keep the Dardanelles Straits, which is this narrow place where oceans meet right above what is now Istanbul, what then was Constantinople, tried to secure that and keep the Turks from manning, because the Turks at the time were allied with the Axis powers, with Austria, Germany, and all. And is that big enough? Sorry? Have I shared my screen? You can't see it? Oh. How about that? Does that work? You can see it here, right? But it's not, they can't see it. Okay, all right. So I'm not going to replay the whole Gallipoli campaign, but as Eric Bogle's song narrates, they recruited thousands of Aussie and Kiwi troops, put them on ships, sailed them over to Turkey. If you know where Istanbul is, look for the Dardanelles Straits. And under very, very questionable, spotty, doggy military guidance, over a matter of 3 weeks, were pounded to bits. And it was a disaster. And it's called Anzac, Australia National and Australia New Zealand Auxiliary Corps, Army Corps. It was a shock for Australians and New Zealanders, and the French lost a huge number of soldiers for no good reason, right? And honestly, although people love Winston Churchill, he was a big part of the decision-making from the British side. This is one of Churchill's darker moments before he became the hero of the Battle of Britain and the end of the war in the Second World War. So anyway, Eric Bogle has written what I consider the best anti-war song going. When I was a young man, I carried me pack, and I lived the free life of a rover. From the Murray's green basin to the dusty outback, well, I watched my Matilda all over. Then in 1915, my country said, son, it's time you stop rambling, there's work to be done. So they gave me a tin hat, and they gave me a gun, and they marched me away to the war. And the band played Waltzing Matilda as the ship pulled away from the quay. And amidst the all cheers, the flag waving and tears, we sailed off for Gallipoli. Oh, how well I remember that terrible day, how our blood stained the sand and the water, and of how in that hell they called Suvla Bay, we were butchered like lambs at the slaughter. Johnny Turk, he was waiting, he'd primed himself well. He showered us with bullets, he rained us with shell, and in 5 minutes flat, he'd blown us all to hell. Nearly blew us right back to Australia. But the band played Waltzing Matilda when we stopped to bury our slain. And we buried ours, and the Turks buried theirs. Then we started all over again. Those that were left, well, we tried to survive in that mad world of blood, death, and fire. And for 10 weary weeks, I kept myself alive, though around me the corpses piled higher. Then a big Turkish shell knocked me arse overhead, and when I woke up in my hospital bed and saw what it had done, well, I wished I was dead. I never knew there were worse things than dying. For I'll go no more waltzing Matilda all around the green bush far and free. For to hump tent and pegs, a man needs both legs. No more waltzing Matilda for me. So they gathered the crippled, the wounded, the maimed, and they shipped us back home to Australia. The legless, the armless, the blind, the insane, those proud wounded heroes of Suvla. And as our ship pulled into Circular Quay, I looked at the place where me legs used to be, and I thank Christ there was nobody waiting for me to grieve and to mourn and to pity. But the band played Waltzing Matilda as they carried us down the gangway. But nobody cheered, they just stood and they stared. Then they turned all their faces away. So now every April I sit on me porch and I watch the parades pass before me. And I see my old comrades, how proudly they march, reviving old dreams of past glory. And the old men march slowly, all bones stiff and sore. They're tired old heroes from a forgotten war. And the young people ask, what are they marching for? And I ask myself the same question. But the band plays Waltzing Matilda, and the old men still answer the call. But as year follows year, old men disappear. Someday no one will march there at all. Waltzing Matilda, Waltzing Matilda, who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? And their ghosts may be heard as they march by that billabong. Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? So that's Eric Bogle's outstanding anti-war song. My goodness. So we have another, don't want to leave you there. We've got another remarkable story about expedients. And the heart of that fifth stage is compassion and kindness, right? The Bodhisattva is looking directly at living beings, looking at us, because he is not apart from living beings. He is indeed entirely a living being, but he's an awakened living being, and that's the difference. All right. So, as many of you know about the Dharma Realm Buddhist Association, we have a monastery in Santa Cruz Mountains, the mountains near Santa Cruz, California, in a little town called Boulder Creek. And Boulder Creek is a tiny hamlet. It is really a wide spot on the road. There are some folks who actually live in the little, it's hard to call it a city. It's a little town of Boulder Creek, but most of us live in the woods surrounding Boulder Creek. We have a monastery there called Wood Vihāra. And紅木禪林, it's called紅木禪林. And in the town of Boulder Creek, there is a Chinese restaurant. Indeed, there is. And that single Chinese restaurant is run by Jenny Wu. And Jenny has been there for quite a while. And she has a remarkably generous heart. She likes us because we're the monks who speak Chinese, and she always gives us free stuff when we go in. You know, she does take our money. We insist that we pay for the food. But Jenny is a very open heart. And I will let the story take over at this point. Okay, hold on here. We want to, we're going to reboot. There we go. A Santa Cruz love story, saving the red pearl. Okay, stop, please. I will let the NBC Bay Area newscasters take it over from here. Optimize for video clip. Here we go. Here's the story. Stop. Got it. There we go. One more time, please. Here we go.
We're going to go back to our storm coverage. As we've been telling you, this latest storm posing a big threat to people living in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
But people tell us they get through it all by having each other's backs. Garvin Thomas shows us in tonight's Bay Area Proud, it's not just something they say, it's something they mean and do.
This is at its heart a love story. Not between two people, mind you, but between a Santa Cruz mountain town and its Chinese restaurant. Boulder Creek just loves the red pearl, and its owner, Jenny Wu, loves them right back.
Hi, guys.
And both have spent the past 12 months proving it to each other.
They are so nice. Everybody so friendly. Yeah, they just want to help you. This one is chef special.
Jenny has run the Red Pearl for 15 years. The last one, of course, being by far the hardest.
Yeah, last year, super hard. Yeah.
Not only has the pandemic, like everywhere else, cut into restaurant business, in August, the CZU wildfire ripped through the region. Jenny lost everything when her home burned to the ground, and the restaurant had to be closed for weeks. The moment the evacuations were lifted, though, Jenny was already thinking about how to help her neighbors.
Well, we were all just really freaked out.
Valerie White is a friend and customer.
First thing she did when she came back into town was put tables out there and have meals for the entire community. So that's how Jenny is.
The community, in turn, raised money to help Jenny get back on her feet. But the story doesn't end there.
Beef broccoli.
Just last week, during a power outage, a thief stole $1,000 in cash from the Red Pearl. As word spread, a GoFundMe popped up that's already raised more than 5 times what Jenny lost.
Just the love and gratitude that she showed everybody else. Once everybody heard that she got stolen from, I instantly knew it was going to go viral for her.
Valerie Wildflower has worked for Jenny for the past 3 years. She says customers are going out of their way to give Jenny business. They were so swamped last weekend, the wait for food was 2 hours, yet nobody complained. Still others just stopped by to put money in Jenny's hand.
Oh yeah, I feel tears. I feel so moved.
Over the past year, we've heard a lot of people use the phrase, "We'll get through this together." Often, those are just words. But every once in a while, if we're lucky, we get to see what that really looks like in action. Garvin Thomas, NBC Bay Area News.
Beautiful story. And the, my goodness, that reporter did a terrific job with his story. So that is our local Chinese restaurant in Boulder Creek. And I must say, none of that was exaggerated. Indeed, Jenny is a kind-hearted soul. So we'll get through it together. That's a coronavirus is not over by any means. Something I wanted to share before we ask Jin Chuan or Jin Wei Shi to share news from Berkeley Monastery is some news here. This is an online proposal by the Jodo Shinshu Temple in Los Angeles is the heart of a movement. Please join in supporting #MayWeGather, a national Buddhist memorial ceremony for Asian American ancestors to be live streamed on Tuesday, May 4th, coming up, 2:20 at 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, California time. Join the list of endorsing individuals and temples at maywegather.org. I just found this. Here's their poster, May We Gather. I just discovered this a couple hours ago, and it looks like an excellent initiative that individuals can put their names on the list. Buddhist groups can do a national, international, now global Buddhist memorial ceremony for Asian American ancestors who suffered. When someone is hurting, we come together as community. We gather because our lives are inexorably interlinked. We don't suffer alone, nor do we heal alone. Only when we gather as a Sangha can we truly support each other's freedom. When Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Filipino, Southeast Asian immigrant ancestors came to the US in the 1850s, we faced exclusion and violence. Buddhist and Taoist temples desecrated and set ablaze. When our Japanese American forebears were herded into US concentration camps in the 1940s, our priests were classified as a threat to national security. Buddhist faith was called un-American. South and Southeast Asian parents and grandparents arrived on the shores in the 70s, many fleeing wars inflamed by the American military. We were told our cultures and Buddhist traditions didn't belong. So now, as there is anti-Asian sentiment, particularly in the US, there has been an initiative now led initially by Professor Williams. Higashi Hongwanji down in LA, that's the Jodo Shinshu, was damaged. And so these groups are coming together as an opportunity to repair, to liberate together. And they're asking for online membership. So I just want to share maywegather.org. Look at the list of partner temples here. So many, right? Including Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. Sangha and organizations you can join worldwide. Look at the numbers. That's an impressive number of people supporting, and you can join as an individual. And this just goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on. So just to share with everybody, let you know, on May 4th, there's going to be, that will be May 5th here, morning. Here in Australia, let's see, that will be, I've got my handy dandy time converter here. 4 p.m. is 10 a.m. the Gold Coast on the 5th. So it'll be an hour. You join on YouTube, and there's not, you don't, the program is set. You get to participate spiritually and virtually. And I believe it will be led largely by the Jodo Shinshu, if I'm not mistaken. We'll see. Anyway, so just to let people know that that's an opportunity to express solidarity with Asian American Buddhists and Buddhists and friends worldwide, and non-Buddhists as well. Okay, Jinchuan, Jinwei Shi, do you have any announcements for us?
Yes, we just have one announcement that I think is people should need to know about. If you go to the Berkeley Monastery website.
Okay, 1 second here, let me bring this up.
We have the Great Compassion Mantra Dedication of Merit, which usually we have at 6:30, but it's been moved up to 6 a.m. So from 6 to 6:45, we'll have our Great Compassion Mantra Dedication of Merit on Zoom and YouTube. And then at 7:15, we'll have our regular sharing for reading Reverend Heng Shui and Marty's 3-Step 1 Bow journals, followed by 3 Steps 1 Bow at 7:30 to 8. And our recitation in the afternoons has been moved up to 12 p.m. So it's 12 to 12:30. But otherwise, our schedule is the same.
Okay, so repeat the highlights is
The time,
Great Compassion. Yeah, go ahead.
the Great Compassion Mantra dedication of merit has been moved up to 6 to 6:45 a.m.
6 to 6:45. It's
Yeah.
usually what time?
6:30 to 7:30. But we
Okay,
moved
so
it up
it's-
because of the bowing repentance ceremony. Many people have been
City of
participating.
10,000 Buddhas is bowing the 10,000 Buddhas repentance, and in order to avoid a time collision, so and made earlier. So if you want to transfer the merit from the Dabe Jo, tune in at 6. There's a Vietnamese translation, and then the ordinary Amitabha and Guanyin recitation at Berkeley Monastery has been moved up as well. Right?
Yes, that's right. And everything else is the same.
Everything else is the same. All righty. Okay, so contemplating our fifth ground Bodhisattva's ability to use expedient means to teach now, because his samadhi and his compassion are now solid. Let's imitate that that need to teach living beings, because he doesn't separate them from himself. They're not two, they're one. And his willingness to use mantras and music and mindfulness to send out goodness worldwide. Let's do that. Here's our Medicine Buddha mantra. Samyak Sambuddhaya Adhyata Vasaji Vasaji Vasaja Samudate Swaha Bhagavate Vasaja Samyak Sambuddhaya Adhyata Om Vasaji Vasaji Vasaja Samudate Swaha Bhagavate Vasaja Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tagyata Om Vasaje Vasaje Vasaja Samudate Swaha. So, how many folks today? 70 friends on the Chinese channel. Don't know how many joined us on YouTube. Next week, the 6th stage is our focus, and this is a creation story. The 6th stage is unbelievably powerful in using the Buddha's wisdom to look at the nature of all life. So if you ever ask yourself the question, who made all this? Where do we come from? What's going on? Next week is where you want to tune in. Listen to the 6th ground of the 10 stages of Flower Garden Sutra. Here we go. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Already